How do you prioritize everything you want to get done without feeling overwhelmed? That is the question we're going to be answering today. Hey, what's up? My name is Elena. Welcome back to my channel. About a month ago, I posted a video about my 30-minute weekly planning routine. And considering I had about like 18 subscribers at the time, that video kind of blew up. So if you found me through that video, hey, welcome, thanks for being here. But in the video, in the comments, I did get a few questions asking about prioritization, how to do it effectively, how I decide what to prioritize, what I learned about prioritization as I got better at it. So in today's video, I did want to go deeper on the main strategy that I shared in my previous video, as well as offer 3 extra tips for prioritization in your daily and weekly routine. Now, I will say, prioritization has so much more to do with your mindset and your judgment of things than it does with using specific tips and tricks and strategies, but I know everyone loves a good productivity hack, as do I, so I wanted to share a little bit more about the Eisenhower Matrix, which is the main prioritization strategy that I use in my weekly planning routine. Basically, in the Eisenhower Matrix, you have this matrix where across the top you have urgent and not urgent, and then across you have important and not important. So it creates these 4 distinct categories that you can slot your tasks into and then decide what you want to do with them. The general recommendation when it comes to this is that in quadrant 1, which is important and urgent, those are the things that you want to do right away. Those are your top priorities. Then you move on to important but not urgent. Those are the things that you schedule into your calendar so that A, they don't become urgent, and B, you actually make sure that you make time for the things that are truly important to you. Then you have the urgent and not important category, which is the category that you want to try and delegate as much as possible and get off your plate, because if it's not important to you, why are you the one doing it? Then we have the not important and not urgent, which is like, why is that even on your to-do list to begin with? That's the stuff you can just throw away, get rid of, and forget about it. So the question I got about this specifically was, how do I decide what is urgent and important and what goes into those buckets? The honest answer is that it's going to be very subjective. I can't tell you what's urgent to you or what's important to you. That's something that you need to sit down and kind of judge for yourself. And at first it is going to be a little bit tricky if you're new to this system to decide like where to draw the line, but ultimately it really is up to you, and it does get easier over time, I promise. So let's start with urgent, because I think it's a little easier to discern that urgent means time sensitive, right? Like things that have some kind of deadline, things that need to be done urgently for one reason or another. Now, the issue is that in our kind of like hustle culture steep society, a lot of things can feel urgent even when they're not actually urgent. A lot of things can feel like emergencies, even if they're not true emergencies. And so it's really important here to learn to be honest with yourself and decipher what urgent means to you. So most of the time, I only consider 3 things urgent. One is client work and like deadlines that I have to do for work that I promised to someone, and I want to stick by my word. So those are things that are urgent if they are like due that week, or I know I have to kind of like make progress on a certain project so that I can deliver it on time the following week, or whatever the case is. Number 2 are big commitments that I have made to myself. For example, I have decided that for all of 2023, I'm going to be posting 1 video a week on YouTube here. The fact that I already missed 1 week, we're just gonna gloss over that fact. But when I make these big commitments to myself, I basically am like treating myself or my work like it's like another client. So any like deadlines or things that I tell myself I want to do and that I've committed to doing, I treat that as if it is a like true deadline, because it is to me. I might not be disappointing anyone else or like breaking anyone else's trust as much, but I'm breaking my trust and I'm disappointing myself, and that is just not good for the relationship you have with yourself. And the relationship you have with yourself is the baseline for your life. So that's really important to me, and I always prioritize that. Finally, the third thing that will often also fall into the category of being urgent is anything that is relatively time sensitive and also has like a really negative consequence attached to me not doing it. Again, what counts as really negative here is really dependent on you, and it might not be even something that is truly like seen as so devastating to other people, but if to you it's really going to be important that this is done at a certain time, or else you might like lose an opportunity or kind of just generally have bad vibes from like not completing it, then, you know, we want to avoid those bad vibes. So anything that I feel is going to have like too negative of a consequence that I really don't want to experience can sometimes also become urgent. Now let's talk about what's important. Whether or not something is important or not is much more subjective because it's really based on your unique goals, your season in life, what your focus is right now. And to be honest, if you're having trouble deciding what is important or not important, then that's a sign that you need to really be asking yourself a bit of a deeper and a bigger question when it comes to what you are trying to do. What is your main focus? And that means understanding who you are, understanding what it is you want out of life, and what path might be the path that you want to try and take to get there. Now, I want to be clear that this does not require being like super specific. You don't have to have these like perfectly planned out smart goals. In fact, I find it better if I don't have smart goals. They just don't work for me. But you do need a direction, even if it's something as vague as I want to experience more joy on a day-to-day basis in my life, or I want to explore the possibility of new career paths. So notice how it's not like these structured goals where you're saying, I want to have achieved or checked a box by this date, or else it's like a failure. It's just a general intention and direction that you know you want to move towards. So don't force specificity just for the sake of being specific, but do have a direction, because otherwise, how are you supposed to know what's important and what's not important if you don't know yourself and your bigger life goals? So hopefully that gives you a little bit more clarity around how to use the Eisenhower Matrix and how to make those decisions. If you do have additional questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them as best as I can. The 3 additional tips that I have for prioritization, these can just kind of be blanket statements, blanket tips that you can kind of apply no matter what system you're using. And tip number 1 is to only compare 2 tasks at a time. So rather than looking at your list of like 10, 15, 20 things on your to-do list or whatever it is that's kind of like floating around in your brain and trying to pick out like which of these are my number 1, number 2, number 3 priority, instead only compare 2 at a time. So look at the first 2 things on that list and say, okay, of these 2, which one is more important? Then move on to the next 2, and so forth. And when you're only comparing 2 at a time, it's so much easier to make a decision and not feel so overwhelmed by it. And you will be surprised by how quickly that can sometimes help you sort everything out and really identify at least what your top 2 or 3 priorities are. Tip number 2 is more so about mindset and your approach to prioritization and how you think about it. So in the previous example where I said, you know, you might have like this to-do list of like 10, 15 items, what we often try to do is pick out the top priorities and we try to like decide, oh, what's important, right? Like this is important, but also this is important, and then this is important, and then we kind of get into this cycle of feeling like everything is just constantly growing in importance and like rising in importance, and then it's like hovering over you and all these things feel important. But prioritization is an equation of subtraction. So ask yourself not just what should I be prioritizing? What do I want to prioritize? But also, what can I deprioritize? What can I subtract, remove? Maybe not get rid of completely, but what can I like pull to next week or leave for later? And then you can just see what's left, and that makes it a lot easier to choose what your main focus is. Finally, I don't think we can talk about prioritization without also mentioning boundaries. Strong boundaries reduce the need for harsh prioritization. They're like the preemptive filter that stops your to-do list from getting so large and overwhelming to begin with. And for me, I think that was like such a huge part of getting to the point where prioritization is like almost easy now, because there are so many fewer items on my list to begin with, because I'm already saying no or offering alternatives, and otherwise just making sure that if something is not important, it almost doesn't even make it into my my head into my brain dump or onto my to-do list. Of course, that's not true 100% of the time. Things happen, but your boundaries just make the whole process a lot easier. Of course, having strong boundaries does relate a lot to things like people pleasing and perfectionism and comparison and just like all of this other kind of like internal stuff that often prompts us to say yes when what we really want to say is no. Of course, there's like so much more that we can say about boundaries. So if you're interested in me creating another video specifically about setting and maintaining strong boundaries, let me know and I'd be happy to do that. Just leave a comment below. That's all for today. I hope you found that helpful and that hopefully you feel a little more confident in your ability to prioritize, because I know you can do it. You have it in you. It just takes a little bit of practice. I'm so curious to hear which of these tips you found most helpful and what you're going to take away and apply to your life this week. So let me know in the comments below and I will cheer you on. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited to be embarking on this YouTube journey and I'm so excited that you have decided to join me along for the ride. So if you did enjoy this video, I would so appreciate a like, a subscribe. Other than that, I will see you again next week. Bye.